Hey guys, welcome back to Women's Choice, a podcast where we talk about all things women. I'm not sure if you've heard, but women don't exactly have it easy. I'm your host, Ariana Kyrell, and every episode I'll be accompanied by a friend who's passionate about women's issues. We dig into taboo topics like abortions and eating disorders. Women have the power to change the stigma, and that's what we're here to do. Today, we will be discussing women-based abuse. I have my lovely guest, Ava Cates, here to talk about her experience with women-based abuse. Life is so much better when women navigate it together. So hi, Ava. How are you?
Hi, I'm great.
So we're essentially just going to dive right in. Okay. So start off by kind of telling me why you wanted to do the podcast.
So all through high school, starting my senior year, I started dating this boy, and it was just really hard. And there were a lot of things I went through in that relationship, and I do want to talk about all of the not just like physical abuse, but the mental strain it has on me today, even though we've been broken up for almost a year. And those are just some things I want to go over, and not just my personal experience, but things I've heard from other people and things that I know are speaking for people who are too scared to speak up for themselves and have a voice.
Right. So the very first question I just have for you is, what was your relation to your abuser? You said your boyfriend?
Yes. We started dating the beginning of my sophomore year of high school, and then we kind of broke up there for a hot minute my senior year, and then we got back together right before I came to college. The worst decision I could have ever made. And then we finally broke up the August of my freshman year of college.
So just kind of dive right into that. Tell me whatever you want to talk about.
Okay. So when we first started dating, he was known in our high school for having multiple ex-girlfriends and, whatever. And I kind of ignored that. And at the beginning, he was great. I mean, I couldn't have picked out a bad thing. And then slowly at about the 3-month mark, I guess when he got comfortable, it started with just like a bunch of little lies, not like about anything major, but just like a bunch of little things that were kind of like, oh, that's strange. Like, why would you lie about that kind of thing?
Yeah.
And then he started getting mad at me for a bunch of little things, like me wanting to know where he was at and like, just keeping me updated. Like, I feel like that's a normal thing to want in a relationship. Yeah. And he would get mad at me, and I'm not talking like, oh, that's a really stupid thing. Like, he was mad, like made full-blown like day-long arguments about it. And I kind of ignored it, and I kind of pushed it off to the side, and I just like dealt with it, which never do. If you're listening, do not ever do that again. And so I dealt with that, and then around the 6-month mark, he cheated on me for the first time, and that was really hard because I let myself get over that, and I should not have, because he manipulated me in ways, not just the cheating, because cheating is one of those things that I tell people, it is not just hurtful to the person, it's embarrassing. And when you're from a small town like I was, everybody around me knew, but nobody felt the need to tell me.
Right.
So I was hurt by that, and then also by him, because I would go to him and I would confront him, and he would lie. He would do his whole run, and I would fall right into it every time. And it was just really, really hard. And then, so he cheated on me the first time, got over it, should not have. And then after that, our relationship was really, really bad. And at that point, I was not in it for the simple fact of love, because I was not gaining love from it. Like, I didn't feel loved at all. And at that point, I was just in it because I was scared to leave. I was too scared to be with him. Like, he had me convinced that he was the only person that could love me. And he had me convinced, like, if I left, no one was ever going to be able to love me like he could. So that's a really hard thing, especially as a 16-year-old girl. Like, you're going through the roughness of high school alone, and then you have this terrible person in your life that's telling you that no one's going to love you like they can. And that's not true. So I went through that, and then my senior year, he cheated on me again. Well, this was like the 4th time. Let me note that. We went through this multiple times. And I finally was like, okay, this is it. This is my breaking point. And that was when he'd been living with me for the past 6 months. And I guess it was just the fact of like, my parents are letting you live here for free and you just cheated on me. So we kind of dealt with that. And I want to go back to like the verbal abuse I would go through. He would sit there and I would wear like middle of summer, like I'm talking like July, it's 100 degrees outside. Yeah. and I have shorts on, and he's like, Ava, you look like a and I'm like, oh, okay. And he's like, you're not allowed to wear that, or don't post pictures on Instagram and that. That's terrible. I don't want people seeing that. And I would just kind of sit there and I'd be like, as a boyfriend, you should be like trying to show me off, and you're not.
Exactly.
And
I love those things that are like, my girl can wear what she wants. I know how to fight.
yeah, like he would just like, don't post that on Instagram or delete that off of Instagram. Like I remember I took a beach trip with my best friend, and I posted beach pictures. Like I was in a bikini,
as
and
one
he
does.
messaged me and goes, I want you to delete, you have 10 minutes to delete that off Instagram or I'm gone. And I was like, oh my God. And like the pictures were not bad at all. Like there were nothing that I would see posted from another girl and be like, oh, she really shouldn't have posted that. Like, ooh, maybe.
Yeah.
Like they were just normal bikini pictures. And I was like, oh, okay. Like I was never allowed to feel good about myself. And because he would say those things to me, like I had began to break myself down, and I had began to make this whole persona of myself that was not true. And like I started seeing myself as that way, and that wasn't fair to me. Like,
so would you say that this entire experience affected your self-esteem and self-image?
oh, 100%. Because when you don't have somebody there to tell you like, oh, you look good, or like, yeah, post that on Instagram, you kind of start to like wonder like, oh, well, there's a reason he doesn't want me to. It's like, it wasn't, oh, he doesn't want me posting that on Instagram because he doesn't want guys to see how good I look. It was like he thinks I'm gross and he doesn't want me to post that on Instagram type thing. And that was that was really hard on me, because at the time I was struggling with like my own self-image, and he wasn't helping, because also it wasn't just, oh, don't post that on Instagram or don't wear that. It was, oh, hey, I'm cheating on you, by the way. So like, I'm not good enough to post on Instagram. He never posted me either. So like, I'm not good enough to post on my Instagram. I'm not good enough for you to post to me, and you're also cheating on me. So like what is there that I'm supposed to believe like, oh, I'm great, like I'm a good person? Like how am I even supposed to think of myself highly anymore?
Right, yeah. Well, when someone's telling you, makes you feel that you're like this gross thing.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, I'm also with this other woman. You think, oh, well, she's prettier than me. She's better than me.
Yeah, like
all
what does
these
she have, or
things.
what is she giving you that I can't give you? And like that was the thing.
Exactly.
I was running myself like dry. Like I was like, okay, well, I'm clearly not doing something right, or it was never me, and I never really realized that. Like, PSA, if you're being cheated on, it's not you, it's him, first of all.
Yes.
Like, it's not you, it's him. Nothing's wrong with you. Like, but that's a really hard mindset to get yourself out of. Like, clearly it's me. Because your first instinct is, oh, well, what did I do wrong?
Right.
What did I do that made you go do those things?
Especially when you've been manipulated to think that, oh, he loves me.
Yeah.
He's all I'll ever get. Things
Yeah.
like that.
Like, when you're in the mindset of nobody's going to love me as good as him, and then he goes and cheats on you, like, you sit there and you're like, well, what did I do? Like, I thought I was doing everything I could. And there was a point in time in our relationship where I wasn't allowed to do anything. I wasn't allowed to have boys on Snapchat. So it came to the point where he made me delete Snapchat. Yeah.
No one saw, but I raised my eyebrows.
Yeah. I had to go through one day. I vividly remember this. We had been in an argument. He made me go through on my Instagram and unfollow all of these guys. Like, and I'm talking like guys I went to high school with. Like, again, I'm from a very small town. Like, everybody knows everybody. And I had to unfollow all of them on Instagram. And I was like, that's...
But when you live in a small town, too, I know this for a fact because I also grew up in a small town. People take that offensive.
Yeah.
They're like,
yeah.
What happened? What was the drama?
Or everybody just automatically assumed, oh, her boyfriend made her do that. Like,
Yeah.
that's embarrassing.
Mhm.
Going to high school and everybody just knowing, like, oh, her boyfriend made her do that. Like,
Right, yeah.
Like, and when I came up and didn't have Snapchat, like, my friends would be like, oh, Ava, I sent you a Snapchat. And I'd be like, oh, I don't have Snapchat anymore. And they would just they all just knew without me even having to say, like, my boyfriend made me do that. Like,
Right.
it should never, especially as a high schooler, come to a point where your boyfriend is controlling you so much to the point of, like, you can't have certain social medias. Like, that's terrible. And I do not know why I let myself get down that low.
Mm-hmm.
But these were also things I was keeping from my parents. Like, my parents didn't know these things. Like, when I came up without Snapchat, my parents were like, why don't you have Snapchat? And I was like, oh, I just wanted to delete it. Like, I didn't want it anymore. It's a lot of drama.
Yeah.
Knowing good and well my freaking boyfriend made me delete it. So
Well,
stupid.
it turns you into a completely different person too when you go through that kind of manipulation.
Yeah.
Like you start telling lies to cover for that person,
Yeah.
and you start feeling certain ways about yourself and making up lies to yourself. It changes your whole persona, honestly.
And that's what I was doing there for a minute. I would like lie to my parents about him, or I would lie to other people because other people would be like, "Oh, well, didn't he cheat on you?" And I'd be like, "Well, actually, it was just like, it was just like a whole thing. Like, like I made up this whole story, and like, why are you covering for him, girl? Like,
Yeah.
why are you doing those things?" Like, I still to this day sit back and I'm like, I took up for him. Like,
Mm-hmm.
when nobody else wanted to go to bat for him, I was there.
Right.
And then, like, why though? Like, what was I definitely wasn't gaining anything from it, that's
Yeah.
for sure. But I don't know. It was just it was such a hard time, especially in high school, like, because people talk all through high school,
Oh,
I
yeah.
do. People talk, and everybody had known how he was. And then also, like I said, he played baseball in high school. And I remember at one point, the entire baseball team, he told them that he was cheating on me. Not that we broke up and he was with another girl, like that he was cheating on me. And none of them came to me. None of them reached out. None of them were like, "Hey, did you know about this?" Or, "Hey, just letting you know." Like, and to me, I was like, oh my Lord, like, really, I was just in the blind. Like, and I don't know how. Like, half of my school knew, and I just
Yeah.
was sitting there like, oh, I love my boyfriend so much.
He's so good to me.
And here he is, just cheating away, I guess.
Yeah,
So,
that's insane to me.
yeah.
So I know before this we talked a little bit about love bombing.
Yeah.
Do you want to explain what that is?
So to me, I feel like it can be projected in different ways, but to me, I feel like a huge part of love bombing is kind of, like I explained, like in the first 3 months of mine in his relationship, he was perfect. And he filled my head with all of these things. You're beautiful. You're great. I've never met anyone like you. You're the best person that has walked into my life. Like that whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like I said, around the 6-month mark, things started going downhill. So he knew once he had filled my head with all of those lies of him loving me that I was in and I
Yeah.
was not going anywhere, and he was right. And so I feel like a huge thing, and it's so easy to be blinded by these things, like these words, and it's so easy to be like, oh, well, he loves me, and he's doing it because he loves me, and he's doing it because he wants us to be a good couple. Like, I feel like it's so easy to say those things, and then you don't even realize what's happening right in front of you. Like I said, he cheated right in front of me, and I didn't even know it. And I think a lot of that was me just not wanting to admit it. Like, a lot of
Right.
it was like, oh, well, he loves me, like, so I don't. Like, I feel like a lot of girls I see a lot of girls now in relationships, and I'm just like, I hate to judge relationships, but you can just tell, like,
Yeah.
oh, girl, like, you need to save yourself. And it's so hard to walk up to that girl and be like, hey, I know you don't want to, and I know he loves you. There was air quotes with that.
Yes.
I know he, like, loves you, but, like, girl, he doesn't. And he's not there for good things. And it is so, so hard to make, it's just so hard to make it out and just be like, oh, well, he doesn't actually. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
well, especially since love bombing can seem like such a positive.
yeah.
Like it really feels like, oh my gosh, he does love me.
Yeah.
Like all these things he's saying, he's giving me so much attention. He loves me so much. And then you don't realize the negative impacts that it has.
Yeah, like, oh, yeah, he loves me so much. And then he tells me he loves me. Like, good night, I love you. And then he turns around and goes and cheats on you.
Right.
And, like, that's so hard. Like, and it's such a slap in the face. Like, it is
Mhm.
such, like, a, oh, okay. Like, when you finally realize, like, what's actually happening, you're kind of just like, oh, okay. Like, you don't even, like, it's so hard to process. And you're just like, oh, that's cool, I guess.
So do you think that that whole experience that you went through still affects you now and the relationships you have with significant others?
Absolutely. So, when it happened and when I was with him, I had really knocked myself down to just him, and that's how he wanted it. He wanted me to be the only person, like, or him to be the only person in my life, and that's exactly how it was. And I was kind of like confined. And then when I moved to college and we finally broke up, and we didn't just break up, I cut all ties. I'm talking, I blocked on everything. I had my family block him. And his obsessiveness when I came to college got so bad, I ended up having to make all of my friends block him on social media,
Yeah.
which is embarrassing, but whatever. So we had broken up. And then I had told myself, I was like, I do not want to get back out there. Like, I don't want to get back on the road, like, or not on the road, but like, I don't want to get back in a relationship. Like, I want to just focus on me. And that was what I did for a little bit. And, you know, the typical college girl hopping around, flirting, doing what she does. And I had fun doing that. And it was kind of just like the entire time I found myself and I was like, I can't, like, I never felt like I could get serious with anybody because my first instinct was everybody's going to be just like him. Or I was so scared because they would be so nice in the beginning. And I was like, oh, well, they're nice now, but here in 6 months, they'll be mean or they'll be terrible. And I was just so scared. And then over Christmas break of my first semester of college, I met my boyfriend. Well, I say I met him. I graduated high school with him. And so I've always known him. But we kind of like rekindled and we started hanging out over Christmas break. And we didn't start dating until February. But I was so like still to this day, and it hasn't even been that long, I still think, and I'm like, he's like too nice. But it's like a good too nice. Like he's a great guy. Like do not get me wrong. He's amazing. He's the best thing that's ever happened to me. But it's like sometimes I catch myself and I'm like, Ava, he's not your ex-boyfriend. Like he's not. You have to get over that at some point. And I think that right now the relationship I am in, he is definitely, you know, those things where it's like he's healing something he didn't break.
Yeah.
That's definitely what this is. And like he realizes that and he knows that. And because he knows what I went through. And like I tell him all the time and like his face is just like, you can tell he's like heartbroken that I even had to deal with that.
Yeah.
And I think that to this day, like even though I'm slowly starting to get over it, and I know it takes a lot longer for a lot of people, but even though I'm slowly starting to get over it and find my way back, I still catch myself at points and I'm like, how can I trust him? Like my now boyfriend, like how can I really trust what he's doing? Like, but like I have to like think to myself like, Ava, it's okay. Just don't worry about it. And that's kind of how I've dealt with it myself. But yeah, I can definitely say like to this day, it still affects me 100%.
What's one thing you wish you could tell your younger self with the knowledge that you have now?
Oh my God. Don't. But other than that, I remember, side story real quick. When I caught him cheating one time, we were in my bedroom. We were arguing, of course. And he would do this thing when we would argue, and I don't know if this bothers you like it bothers me, but he would do this thing when we would argue, and he would be like, well, I'm just going to leave, and like get up and walk out. I don't like that.
Yeah.
Sit down, man up, and talk to me, and we're going to have a conversation. And he had tried to walk out of my room, and I stood in front of the door because it was like 2 o'clock in the morning, and my parents were asleep. And I was like, dude, I'm not trying to wake the whole house up right now. And I just stood in front of my door, and I remember he grabbed me by my arms and like tossed me off to the side. And granted, none of y'all can see me. I'm a very small framed child. I'm really tiny. And he was like 6'2", 250 pounds.
Yeah.
So he was huge compared to me. And when that happened, I remember I'm sitting there and I was like, he just put his hands on me. And then part of me was like, no, Ava, he was just moving you. And then I was like, no, girl, he just put, like, he
that's
shoved
abuse.
you. Yeah. And I was like, okay. So with that being said, I would look at my younger self and I would tell her to not think of that as a little thing. And it's not normal at all for your boyfriend to lay hands on you like that. And I also just want her to know that even though she does not receiving good love from a man, it's not important and you don't need it. And you do learn to eventually love yourself without a man's help. And you do get out of it, believe it or not, even though the entire time it feels like you're not going to. Because that was the other thing. He was so, like, I don't know the word. Like, it was like a parasite almost. Like, no matter how hard I tried, and I knew after, like, a year and a half, like, there was no love attachment to him. Like, that sounds terrible, but, like, I didn't love him. And it was just so hard to, like, pull myself away from that. I was 3.5 years of my life, like, down the drain. But it's not hard to leave. You just don't want to. And that's understandable because it's hard to leave what you're comfortable with, you know, like even if your comfortability is being verbally abused, like you're comfortable and you don't want to leave that. And that's understandable, but I don't want her to be scared. And I wish she could see, like, I wish I could take that 15-year-old and show her where she's at now, because she would probably pass out. Like, I really mean that. Like, 15-year-old and 16-year-old Ava would probably roll over dead because like it's so shocking. I never thought I would make it to this point. Like I always thought, I was like, I'm never going to get to go off to a university for school because my boyfriend's going to make me stay home and go to a community college. And I was so scared. I was like, he's going to propose to me within the next 3 years of my high school graduation. And I wasn't scared because he was going to. I was scared because if he did, I would say yes because I was too scared to say no.
Right.
And that's terrible. Like I think about it now and I'm like, those are awful thoughts to have, but they're valid. And like, I think a lot of girls think like, especially girls who are in those kind of relationships, they're so scared to sit there and be like, oh, well, I don't love him. But that's terrible. No, it's not, girl. You have every reason not to love him. Like,
well, even if it's a healthy relationship, sometimes like you just don't love that person. That's okay.
yeah.
Like you're allowed to say no.
Yeah. And like, I think a huge thing now is like women are, I say women, like everybody, like we're just so scared to say no to our partners and like, don't like say no. Like if there's something you don't want to do or you think they're moving too fast or they're like, oh, well, let's get a house together. Let's live together. First of all, don't live with them. I'm putting that out there. Do not do that. You see a different side of somebody when you live with them. And I mean that. I really mean that. Like you don't know who someone is until you live with them. And I don't just mean like partners, like well, mostly partners, because like when my ex-boyfriend moved in with me, granted we lived with my parents, but you see how they really are and you see how they are 24 hours of the day.
Because there's no hiding it then.
Yeah, like I'd walk into his room and I'd be like, dude, your room is a mess.
Yeah.
How are you 20 years old and you got dirty clothes everywhere?
Wait, how old was your boyfriend?
He was a year older than me, so when I started dating him, he was 16, but when he lived in my house, he was almost 20 years old. How are you almost 20 years old and you can't get your dirty clothes out of the bathroom?
You scared me because you said 15 and then you said 20, and I was like,
oh, no,
Ava.
no. He started living with me after, right before I graduated high school, so the beginning of my senior year of high school.
Okay.
And then he lived there until about March of the next year, so the March before I graduated high school.
Yeah, it's just for a second I was like, that's a red flag you did not mention.
Girl, you didn't mention the age. No.
Yeah.
We were only like 6 months apart. He wasn't even a full year older than me. But yeah, I just think that, I don't know, I wish I could go back to my younger self and tell her like, hey girl, like
Snap
get it
out of
together.
it. Yeah.
Come on. It's not that important. And like my poor family, bless their hearts, they're amazing. They tried so hard to like give me like sly, like, hey Ava, maybe you should just like not. And I'd be like, no.
No, he's amazing.
No, he's great. And then, because you don't ever want to look at someone, especially like my mom, like she didn't want to look at her daughter and be like, leave him. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
well, people get mad when you tell them that too. If you tell someone to leave someone they're with, they get angry at you.
Yeah. And like, then they shut you out of their life.
And
like,
then that's not any help to anybody.
Exactly. Then nobody's getting anywhere. But yeah, I just think that like, granted, I wish my family would have done that for me, but I know at the time if they had looked at me and been like, hey, you should leave, I'd have been like, no.
Yeah, like, why would you
crazy.
Say that?
Why? You have no reason. You don't even know how it is.
Yeah.
When they do, because they're grown and they do know how it is.
Yes.
So take the adults' advice. Always.
Well, thank you so much for coming on today.
You're welcome.
It's been a pleasure. That's all we have for today's episode, and this will be the last episode of Women's Choice ever. So thank you so much for listening. Bye.